So, welcome to another episode of the Colorado Protectors Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking with some people from the Denver Sheriff's Department. I'm Frank Gale, the host of the Colorado Protectors Podcast, and we're going to be having a discussion with some people from the Denver Sheriff's Department, officers who worked there and are currently working there, related to the problems and critical issues facing that agency. And also joining us today is Sean McCauley. He's a general counsel for the Colorado FOP Labor Council. And we have Jared Firebaugh, who is the president of the Denver Sheriff Lodge 27 of the Fraternal Order Police. Mike Jackson, who is the immediate past president of the Denver Sheriff Lodge Fraternal Order Police. And just as a matter of disclosure, I am a past state president of the Fraternal Order Police in Colorado and past national second vice president. I also was a member of the Denver Sheriff's Department, served my career there for almost 28 years, and served there at all levels of management in that agency. So welcome, guys. Thanks for joining us. Jared, Mike, you guys want to tell us a little bit about yourselves, your background, your experience in the agency?
Yeah, sure, Frank. I started with the Denver Sheriff's Department back in 2004 out at the county jail. Transferred to the downtown detention center when that opened. Spent my time there, and about 2016, tested for sergeant, and got promoted to sergeant in 2017, and currently working at the Denver Detention Center to this day. I started with the FOP board probably about 8 years ago, and floating on past President Jackson's coattails since he's recently retired since then. So,
Mike Jackson.
Yeah, I'm Mike Jackson. I was working for the Sheriff's Department for about little over 30 plus years. I was hired on in 1994. I got on the Fraternal Police board of Lodge 27 in 1998. I became president in 2005, and I was president from 2005 all the way to 2025, basically July of 2025. I've worked mostly at the county jail, and as with overtime and stuff like that, I've worked in other areas of the Sheriff's Department.
Sean, do you want to say something about yourself?
Sure. My name's Sean McCauley. I am the general counsel for the Colorado FOP Labor Council. This is my 26th year of practicing law. I have been working with the Denver Sheriff's Lodge probably longer than any other lodge in the state of Colorado since about 2002. And I also do a significant amount of work for the Fraternal Order Police throughout the states of Missouri and Kansas, and some work in Oklahoma. And pretty much my practice is exclusively representing labor organizations, and specifically doing collective bargaining for those organizations, working with cities and counties across those three states, and negotiating over the terms and conditions of employment for folks like Mike and Jared and the Denver Sheriff's Department, amongst many other throughout the state of Colorado. So thanks for having me, Frank.
Thanks for being here, Sean. Jared, Mike, what do you think the most serious problems are that people are facing now in the Denver Sheriff's Department? What do you think is the most serious? Is it staffing, training, pay, benefits, combination of things? What would you say?
it's really a combination of things. The primary one being staffing. With that comes the pay. A lot of other agencies are paid better and have better retirement or better benefits than the Denver Sheriff Department has. So some of the staff that we do bring in that complete the academy spend a year or two with us and then realize, oh, hey, this is a better deal over here. So they quit us and go over there. We've had multiple conversations throughout the years with city council and the city on the retirement and our pay. And we are currently up for contract renewal for 2026. Those conversations with the city have gone less than positive. And so we're kind of at impasse right now and seeing where we go from there.
You have anything you want to add to that, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, our staffing is a problem. That there's no doubt about that. And we've tried to work with the city on a lot of things, but one of the biggest issues is that they don't seem to have the interest that we do, as they would with other public safety employees that we have with like the Denver Sheriff's Department, the Denver Fire Department and the Denver Police Department, where their staffing levels are well above 90%, and ours are around 60%, and it's been that way for many years now. So we just think that the priority is not on us, and that's one of the biggest problems.
So, I mean, what I'm hearing you say is that you guys you got a significant staffing issue, and that's probably impacted by things like pay, and maybe some other, benefit items and so forth, or other working conditions items as well. Other agencies that are in the Department of Safety in the city and county of Denver are not as short-staffed as you guys are, but they seem to be more of a priority. Is that what you're saying?
It seems to us that they are more of a priority. They don't have any problems getting their contracts resolved. And it seems like every time that we end up in a contract year, we're facing this impasse every time. And it's really what what we feel that the priorities are in the city is that they don't see the sheriff's department and the work that we do as a priority. And that's where we are right now.
So what's being done to try to resolve some of these issues?
Well, in that the Denver Sheriff's Department's its own entity. Denver Fire, Denver Police, they can run short, they can transfer people over, they can cover other areas with other equipment. In the Sheriff's Department, we can't just not have somebody not show up to work a housing unit. We have to have people in those units. So with our recruiting, they're trying to increase the number of applicants we have in the academies. That's kind of gone from very minimal from 6 to 12 people in the academies up to, we try to run classes of 30. Getting the 30 people through the background investigation, all the medical stuff and everything, and the testing costs money to do, sure. But even in that, you see the other agencies in the Department of Safety running classes of 40 and 50 applicants, and we're put on a back burner of, we've got to get these people through before we work on yours. So we've constantly been pushing back our academy dates, whether it's due to that happening or they keep it open because we don't have the applicants, because people look around and say, what are the benefits? What are the pay? And, it's better over here. I'll apply over there.
So you're basically saying that if your wages and benefits and things are not competitive with other agencies, I imagine, especially in the metro area, that it's causing a problem of being able to attract recruits,
yes,
who want to come to the sheriff's department. And so this is one of the things you think is continuing to cause this plague of low staffing.
So sorry.
No, go ahead.
So yes, we are all the outside agencies around Denver. We're all competing for the same applicants, basically. People apply at multiple places, whether it be in construction, in retail, in law enforcement. people apply at multiple places. Well, we're all competing for those people. So we're competing for the same applicants that Adams County is looking at, that Arapahoe County is looking at, that Denver's looking at, that Jeffco. And from that, we need a smoother process. We need competitive pay and competitive benefits to help draw those people over to Denver to where they start looking at us first and not those outside areas.
So, Mike, you worked there 30 years. I know when I worked there, you were working there. And I've been retired for several years. But I'm interested in your perspective on how the staffing and the pay and benefits issues or other problems are. How do you think they stack up today versus the way they were 10, 20 years ago?
Well, there are a lot of differences. Before, when I first started on the agency, the pay wasn't very high, but you had a very good retirement and you had good benefits and your health insurance was really solid. Those things have now passed. There have been many changes into our retirement. Denver sheriffs are part of the Denver Employee Retirement Pension System. So it's the DERP system. So we're locked in with the other city employees. And in 2004, they made some changes to our retirement and kind of cut what the percentage that you would earn per year would be. And they did the same thing in 2010, which was a really big change because they changed the rule, which we were under a rule of 75. They went to a rule of 85. The minimum age prior to that was 55, and now the minimum age to retire is 60. So it really changed the dynamics of how people viewed themselves when they came on the sheriff's department. So if our new recruits were young, in that 21 to 25 range, they had a hard time seeing themselves having to work until they're 60 years old, because it would be 35, 40 years that they would have to work. And if they came in older, in the like above 35 or so, the hard part was meeting that rule of 85 to get their full retirement without any penalty. So those things really affected how people viewed our agency when they came on, and really kind of made a determination of once they got on the agency that if they were going to try to work that out or they were just going to leave and go to another agency. And then down the line, when the pay started to rise with the other agencies, the competitiveness was really the biggest thing. People would see what you would max out at, and our max rate is still well below the average when it comes to the other agencies that surround us.
And so you think, so this is not just a recruitment issue. It sounds like it's a retention issue. People come on the department after they're there. They realize they can make more money someplace else. They realize that their retirement's not competitive, that they have to work longer. I mean, I know I'm a career law enforcement officer and a person who represented officers all over the country and throughout the state. People don't work. Don't expect to work as law enforcement officers into their 60s. People typically will expect to work and when they're in their 50s. And so if they think they have to work into their 60s or longer, that I potentially could be something that they wouldn't want to do, or would decide, I can go someplace else and do something different. I get that. That makes, okay, so some of those things kind of provide a picture, but and you mentioned that you were doing collective bargaining negotiations. 2025 was a collective bargaining negotiation year.
Yes.
Isn't the collective bargaining process a place where a lot of these problems can be addressed?
It should be a place where a lot of these problems could be addressed. It's incumbent on the city to answer our questions and deal with us, and we do the same with them. It's supposed to be similar to a back and forth negotiation of that type. And a lot of the issues that we bring up within the contract fall by the wayside. Like, we're not talking about that. We're not doing that. That should be policy. That doesn't need to be in the contract. And we want these things in the contract to help secure our position more and be a stronger voice with the city, so these things do get handled easier.
You have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, currently the way that our contract works is it's mostly monetary issues, and a lot of things like shifts, days off, things like that, promotions, vacations, how those things are happen. We would like to have more control over those things. But right now it's all monetary. So when people ask us what do we do to try to improve ourselves, it has to deal with monetary things like pay, certain benefit items, increasing those things. And when we look at what the surrounding counties are getting, we're trying to keep ourselves with keeping ourselves up with them, so we can actually show people that, hey, this is something that is of value to you to come and be a Denver deputy. Otherwise, we really start to lack down. We have to talk to city council members. We have to talk to people in public safety, and really try to get them to understand that without us being competitive and not having to pay on the only things that we really can control, because we don't manage the agency, is these are the things that we think are going to improve our staffing and our quality of life as being a Denver deputy.
So you're saying that the contract negotiations are largely driven by monetary items. So you're saying wages and benefits.
Yes.
Basically is what's driving it. Other working conditions items like shifts and promotions and assignments and discipline and those kind of things. That's not really what's driving it. But you're saying you think that you'd like to see a time when you could be focused on those issues versus just the money. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, those are the things that kind of make the big difference in the agency, because when you're only dealing with pay and benefits, that's kind of only thing that we can really affect to help our members and people who want to be Denver deputies. That's the only thing we can actually affect. We can't affect the way that they run certain areas, and a lot of agencies have the ability to vote on how they want to do their shifts, how they want to do their vacations, how their assignments, being able to bid assignments and things like that. And that actually improves the working life of a Denver deputy. And we don't have that control.
So you guys don't have the authority to negotiate over those items, is what you're saying. Okay.
That's right.
Sean, do you want to come in here? You want to jump in and talk about, you do a lot of collective bargaining. You want to talk about kind of whether the bargaining process could have an impact on some of these problems that the agency's having?
For sure. Just given kind of a global perspective and a statewide perspective in Colorado is, with the staffing that Mike and Jared have discussed today. And I'm just going to put it simple. The staffing in the Denver Sheriff's Department is abysmal and it's dangerous. And we've been talking about the dangers and the abysmalness of that and how this is an untenable situation, not just in this contract negotiation, but for several years. And the reason for that is this statewide perspective that I have the fortune of having of negotiating for sheriff's departments and police departments across the state. And since, the early part of the 2020s, there's been a significant decline in the number of people entering the law enforcement profession, and also in a significant increase in the people that are leaving the law enforcement profession, either early retirements, leaving it altogether to go work in another field, leaving the state of Colorado to work in other places in law enforcement. So obviously the staffing issue has impacted not just the sheriff's department, but all departments throughout the state. The difference between Denver and everywhere else, and Denver sheriffs especially, is other cities have made it a priority to address this issue by recognizing that the major way to do that and the most significant way to do that is through pay and benefits, and especially pay, because younger workers or workers in other departments that might be looking for a change and or looking to enter the profession, they are going to look at what is this going to provide for me and my family if I enter this. And if they look at the sheriff's department compared to other departments that are doing similar work under similar circumstances, and quite honestly, in some places, maybe easier circumstances than these guys are, considering the staffing problem, they're going to look at where do they rank in pay. And other cities have come to the table even when they didn't have to, because I can tell you 20 years ago, the mindset of most cities was we need to stay within a competitive range. We don't have to be number one. We just have to be number 4 and we'll still get people because we have 200, 300, 400 people testing for 20 positions. Now we have 20 positions that are open and we have 5 people show up to test at different departments. Yeah. And so what happens is, and those same 5 people, as Jared was kind of describing, are testifying all over the metro area and throughout the state and in other states. So these folks have a lot more command in the process of saying where they want to go. And when they get an offer of employment and I can make $8,000, $10,000, $12,000 more at another police department or sheriff's department, what do you think they're going to do? And it's obvious they're going to go to the place where they can make the most money. Money doesn't drive everything. But when you're a young person and you're looking about their future, they want to know they can take care of their family on that salary. And the Denver Sheriff's deputies are paid pretty well. But in the end, they're paid significantly less than others. And the reason for that is other cities and counties have made it the highest priority. And the city and county of Denver, we are an afterthought in terms of priorities and a significant afterthought. And the reality is when we go to negotiations, we are ultimately begging to be at the table. And we're working towards trying to be at the table. And that's not a reflection of the people that are at the table with us, because many of them understand the problems that these deputies face in working thousands and thousands of overtime hours that no one else anywhere is doing that. Because that's the reality of having a 50% or 60% staffing range, is that you still have to do the work. The 100% of the work has to be done by 60% of the people. And so what happens is those people have to work twice as hard as everybody else. Sure, they make more money, but they're still working more hours. They're not seeing their family. They're working forced overtime. Nobody can do this job to that extent for that long a period of time before they go, this is not worth it. And I need to find a different place to work. And when other places are paying more on top of that, it's an easy decision. And so the reality is, if the city and county of Denver decided that the sheriff's department was a priority, it would be fixed tomorrow in terms of their pay. And it would be fixed tomorrow in terms of other things that, like Mike described, that we can't negotiate over. But when you have this circumstance, you have to make it a priority. And for really the past 5 or 6 years, they haven't. And that's why we find ourselves in this terrible position where we're just basically trying to empty a boat filling up with water with a thimble, and them trying to take the thimble away from us. So that really is the issue, that we just want them to understand, and we want the public to understand that this has to be a priority, because it's an unsafe environment for employees, and it's an unsafe environment for those that these guys are managing that are in the jails and the facilities in Denver. We live in a country where we put people in prison, but when they're there, we have to protect them. We have that same obligation. We don't just toss a key and walk away. And these guys are, and men and women at the sheriff's department are standing on a post where they can't even get relieved to go to the bathroom because we don't have enough people. And that should be a priority. Should be a priority for the citizens of Denver, and it should be a priority for the people and the politicians that are running the city and county of Denver.
So, I mean, I've seen some things in the media related to the city and county of Denver having some financial challenges. I mean, and you're saying it's a matter of what the priorities are, but how does that correlate with the financial challenges?
Well, there's no question that the city and county of Denver should be a market leader with regard to the way they pay employees, but also the revenues that they bring in. And no one that's coming into the city would ever believe that the city is some Rust Belt Northeast city that lost a steel mill and can't operate. The reality for the city and county of Denver is they've decided where their priorities are. And it is not this department because they have the resources to fix it. And quite honestly, if they can't fix it this year, let's talk about what's the plan? What's the plan to fix it? And all we do year to year is kick the can down the road and put the Band-Aid over the bullet hole, and they have never come up with a plan. And there is no doubt that the city can't afford this if they want to. But they have prioritized other aspects of the city, right, wrong, or indifferent, than these guys. And we're basically towing a very thin line of disaster. And at some point, it's going to be something horrible is going to happen. And then it will finally get the priority. And we just want them to fix it before we get there.
So you had collective bargaining negotiations in 2025. You didn't come to an agreement. And so what the current status is what? Impasse?
We're at impasse. We're scheduled to go to interest arbitration at the end of February. That's in accordance with the city charter provision that allows for bargaining for the Denver Sheriff's deputies. This is an arbitrator that is selected from a list that is created by the city. And so we will present our respective positions at that, and the arbitrator will issue a decision that is binding on both parties. But honestly, we should be working together to try to find a solution and not have to ask a third party to solve our problems for us. And if we received an offer that put us into a position where we knew there was a plan, and the plan was to fix the problems at the sheriff's department, we could easily reach an agreement. But they have really never put any plan out there that makes any sense about what's going to happen not only in 2026, but beyond. And so we are still obviously hopeful that we can reach an agreement. But if we have to, we believe an arbitrator is going to see these unbelievable problems that, quite honestly, he wouldn't see anywhere else. Because that arbitrator is likely to have heard stories about understaffing in the last 5 years for sure. But I would feel very confident saying he has never heard of a 60% staffing in a sheriff's department the size of the Denver Sheriff's Department.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what I'm hearing. It sounds unprecedented. And I have a lot of discussions and conversations and interactions with officers throughout the state. And I've no one, even though there are agencies that are short-staffed, no one seems to be as significantly short-staffed as the Denver Sheriff's Department is right now. So, yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like it's a crisis. But what you're saying, Sean, is that even though you're at impasse, you could still have an agreement. There's still the opportunity to get resolution and have an agreement on this, on this matter, even outside of going to a third-party neutral arbitrator.
That's correct.
Okay. So, I mean, sounds like the staffing is a big deal. It's a problem, and some of this could be addressed and fixed through, the negotiations process. Mike mentioned earlier that he didn't feel like the sheriff's department in Denver was given the same consideration and priority as other public safety agencies. We know the Denver Police Department and the Denver Sheriff's Department also, have a collective bargaining process, and they were both able to come to an agreement. What's the difference, would you say, and why they're getting an agreement and the Denver Sheriff's Department isn't?
Yeah, what we're seeing is that the fire department and the police department in Denver are competitive in their wages, and we're not. And anytime you talk with, anytime you see anything on the news or in the paper, they're talking about the fire department, talking about the police department, and their commitment to making sure that they are going to be able to do the job that they are being paid to do. But we do not ever see the sheriff's department in any discussion about a priority on trying to put us in a position to be able to be successful in the job we do.
So it's really a matter of the people that are compared to police officers and firefighters, the Denver police and the Denver firefighters, just stack up way better against those comparisons. And so it's easier for them to get to an agreement because they don't have as much ground to make up.
And that's true. And the other thing is that they're not that far behind. So they're right in there with everybody else on paying their benefits. So it's not a struggle for them.
Yeah.
Because whatever they get is going to keep them in the game. And their staffing shows that.
Yeah, and they're competitive. I mean, so yeah, they just don't have as much ground to make up, seems like.
Well, if I could jump in there a little bit, Frank, on that question as well. As you mentioned, the Denver Police Department is certainly in a much better position with comparison to their other agencies. But here's the other thing that you got to keep in mind. The Denver Police Department is one of the largest in the state, which gives employees much greater opportunities to go other places and do other things outside of regular patrol work. And most law enforcement officers enter the profession understanding that there's going to be a significant portion of the beginning of their career spent working on the streets in patrol. But the Denver Police Department can offer opportunities to go into other aspects, investigations, SROs, and other things that the Denver Sheriff's Department can't necessarily offer because their priority is staffing the facilities. And the other issue is that they're almost fully staffed, which means that they're not losing people to other agencies, and we are. And so there's this lack of staffing isn't because simply no one's coming in the front door. It's because so many more people are leaving out the back door. Mm-hmm. And so they are in a much better position to accept a wage increase that just keeps pace with the market, where we need to take a bigger chunk out of the differential, because we're $8,000 to $10,000 to $12,000 behind these other agencies that we compare to, and they're continuing to get raises. Arapahoe County got a 6% wage increase this year, and they were already $8,000 or $9,000 above us in terms of top pay. So the priority has to be measured by where do we stand in the market, and we are nowhere near the position of the sheriff and the fire department, the police department, and the fire department. And that's really why we have an expectation that we've got to do something more to fix this.
Yeah. And so, it sounds like you're talking about, the turnover as, of employees, of deputies, as being a major factor in this. And what is the turnover? Do you have any idea what the attrition rate of officers in the sheriff's department leaving versus how many being hired every year?
Yeah. So before we started bargaining this year, we looked at how many deputies we had lost up to September, and it was over 80. And we were looking at how many deputies that we had hired on for the year, and that was around 60. So we were already behind the the grill right there. We were like, how are we going to pick this piece up? But the piece that really hurts us is that when we get new deputies, they hit the floor and they start working. And as soon as they're cleared to start working overtime, they're pummeled with overtime. And that's the shock value of being a Denver deputy. As soon as you're off of FTO, they can order you for overtime. And you're going to get ordered probably 2 to 3 times a week. And that means you're going to be working 16 or 14-hour days, 2-3 times a week. And that's the toughest piece, because, already all deputies are required to work at least 24 hours a month, but most can get that done in 1 week. So how do you sustain that kind of a workload over years? It's just impossible to sustain. And that is why it's easy to lose people in 2 and 3 year periods. They're gone. They just disappear because they're going to other agencies. And then the people that we have coming on have applications in 3 or 4 agencies.
So, it sounds like there's a lot of, this turnover has a lot of impact on the people that are working in the agency. obviously there's an impact that's requiring mandatory overtime to the tune of 24 hours a month. But in fact, people are working way more than that.
Oh, yes.
So, and obviously that means that, they're having less time with their families, less time away from work because they're at work more. Would it be fair to say that, that most deputies are working approximately 60 hours a week?
Most deputies, most of our members are on top of their 40 hours a week. They're doing another 18 to 20 hours on top of their 40 hours. That increased in hours away from home doesn't give you the opportunity to reset. When you're at work, you're in a certain mindset. You're more alert. You're more aware of your surroundings. And to maintain that for a long period of time, day after day, working 14 to 16 hours creates a lot of burnout. You can't maintain that mentally or physically and be healthy. So in that turnover, because we're so short-staffed, people start looking fairly quickly at where else can I go? What other departments are out there? They hear about it in the academy. Once you get off FTO, you're going to be working a lot of overtime. So a lot of people in the academy are going, well, this works for right now, but where can I go once I get done?
Yeah. So one of the other things is that in Denver's expensive to live in. It's one of the more expensive cities to live in. If you come in on the sheriff's department, most likely you're not going to live in Denver because you can't afford it. You're going to have to move farther out to be able to afford, with the pay you're making, to be able to afford your rent or your mortgages. So we are also seeing that people are driving farther to and from work, which adds to the problems. And, that's always a danger because, if you're working 16-hour days, you got to drive 30 to 40 minutes or 30 to an hour to get home. That's tough on people. Mm-hmm. And these are the things that Denver deputies have to go through. It's the challenges of everyday life, of trying to navigate your work and your home life. And those things just affect everything, and that's why our turnover rate is just ridiculous.
So how does it actually sit in the sheriff's department today, Denver Sheriff's Department, related to your authorized strength versus what you actually have working, boots on the ground? I mean, how many? Is it? Would you say you're 75, 80% authorized strength?
No. We're closer to 60 or below. Number usually floats in between 58% and 62%, depending on when our academy classes graduate, and it'll spike up just a little, like I said, to 62%, and then given 3 or 4 months after these people are doing that amount of overtime, driving the distance that they need to drive to get home, only sleeping 5, maybe 6 hours a night because they have to get up, get ready to go to work the next day, that number quickly drops back into the upper 50s and right around 60%.
I mean, what is the impact of this overtime? I mean, I worked there and I was in management. I mean, I was a captain and a division chief when I worked there, and I was accountable in the units that I commanded. Related to how I paid overtime and how much I paid and how I managed that in the budget that I had for the unit or the division. What's going on with that? Because it would seem to me if you're at 60% or below of your authorized strength, it would seem that the overtime numbers would be astronomical.
Mm-hmm. They are, and it's always said that overtime will kill a company. That's why companies watch their overtime so strictly. The city wants to save money. Watch our overtime. We're running over the past several years in the 70,000 hours of overtime a year.
It's much more than that. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, it's actually, Frank. They're averaging, by the stats that we pulled, they're averaging 281 to 285,000 hours of overtime. That means that's equivalent to 140 full-time workers. That means that the current folks working at the sheriff's department are making up for 140 less employees and working all of those hours. And it varies obviously from position to position and individual to individual, but that's not just 1 year anomaly. Some departments might run into that because things happen within the department that are either anticipated or unanticipated, and they have to incur that. But it normally gets fixed because someone says, we can't keep sustaining this. Like Jarek said, a company would say, we cannot sustain this. We won't have any employees here if we work them to death, literally. But there is no end in sight. And I would just take this as an example in the law profession, which I'm fortunate enough to be in. And most folks come out of law school and they want to work for a very large law firm because that's where there's money available. But everyone walks into that circumstance knowing it is going to be, for lack of a better term, a meat grinder, which means you are going to work an ungodly amount of hours. Most people can do that because they know there's an end in sight. That you know that after I pay these dues for 2 or 3 years, I won't have to do this anymore, and I will work towards a more normal work schedule. There's no one at the sheriff's department that believes that anytime soon they're not going to have to work 290,000 hours of overtime. And when you think about that, it's depressing and debilitating. And who would want to continue to work there? And so that's why people are going out the back door. You know, Mike worked 30 years. Most people would like to work 30. Mike's healthy. He's able to continue working, but he left when he could instead of when he wanted to or when he continued to enjoy the job. And that's the difference. And until they fix that, they're going to continue to have as many people coming in the front door and then more going out the back. And these giant unsustainable numbers will continue. And they have not shown any interest in finding a solution. And that's why we're at impasse.
I mean, so 290,000 hours of overtime. I mean, what's the actual cost of that to taxpayers? I mean, that's a question.
Approximately about $20 million.
About 20 million. And that's been the average.
Annually?
Yeah. And that's been the average year after year. And we bring these things up to city council. And they're shocked at it, but there's no priority into fixing that problem. We've always said, we're just waiting for a catastrophe to happen in our agency, somebody getting killed or somebody getting seriously injured, just because of the lackadaisicalness, because people are tired and they're burnt out and all these things that come in, and then there's these large payouts, or something like that. But it seems that the city seems to be okay with that because they have not done anything to change it.
Well, it would seem, just based on my experience in the agency, that this situation could be resolved for way less than $20 million a year. If you had the ability to spend, $1 million or maybe $2 million annually toward some of these solutions. I mean, just I'm saying this based on the fact that I used to run, large segments of the organization, that I think you could resolve some of these things. Is there nobody doing that? Is there nobody even working toward that? I mean, what if you could solve these things for $5 million, it would still be worth it versus spending $20 million and not just spending that this year, but next year and the year after. And this has been going on for years.
It's been going on for years. We've been mandated to minimum 24 hours of overtime a month for at least 5 years. A few years ago, it was in the contract that we did a hiring bonus. That didn't help a whole lot. So they're like Sean said, they're putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. Hey, we'll do this for you this time, but next time we're going to take this away. And we're right back to square one. There's no actual plan to build the department, to make the conditions better for people, to look at the Denver Sheriff's Department and say, hey, that's appealing to me. I want to go work there and not somewhere else.
You said earlier, you talked about the fact that, in a jail facility, officers have to be on post. There's a certain amount of posts, and you got to have a body staffing these posts. And so I imagine at some point, in some ways, posts are being shut down because they just don't have enough staff. I mean, you can't work the staff that you have to cover all these things.
Correct.
Is that something else you guys are seeing, that the posts are being shut down
Daily. We run 4 shifts, and out of those 4 shifts, posts are constantly being shut down. They will start with shutting down your response posts or your relief posts, which means if I'm sitting in a housing unit, there's nobody to come in and give me that bathroom break, to give me the lunch break. If something happens in the housing unit that I need some response, medically emergency, fight or whatever, there's nobody coming to help break that up, to help maintain and control the housing unit. There's been times where people show up and say, hey, this housing unit's locked down, do rounds over here and do rounds over here, because we don't have the staff to put 2 deputies in these housing units, which means every 30 minutes you're walking through 2 different pods. Anything can happen in 30 minutes when you're not there. They're all locked down, yes, but some of these housing units have 8 people to a cell. Some of them have 2 people to a cell. It's very hazardous to the people that we care for, and it's hazardous to the deputy because of the added stress and the added overtime that you're working trying to maintain the safety and security of the facility.
Yes. Well, I mean, I know from when I worked there that would shutting down posts would directly correlate to safety impacts inside the facility, and the biggest at risk persons for impacts to safety are actually incarcerated people who are incarcerated in the facility. Yes. It'd be interesting to know. I don't think we have any numbers, but it'd be interesting to know, how many more acts of violence you're seeing during this, this whole situation with the staffing being so short staffed there. I suspect that you probably have an increase in violence in the facilities. That's just based on the things that I learned from working there and what I observed. And so, yeah, it seems like that's a major public safety impact. I mean, obviously the staff is at risk as well. Mm-hmm. I would think that somebody'd want to fix that. So we've talked about the recruitment and the retention, and the fact that nobody's really being focused on that, and the kind of overtime. I know you've mentioned burnout for the deputies. Are you seeing a lot of that? I mean, I imagine you are.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. You're going to see burnout, and it's because of the workload is much heavier. In the 90s and in the early 2000s, the workload wasn't as heavy as it is now. When you have a shortage of staff, that means deputies are now dealing with laundry exchanges and feeds and anything that comes up, they have to deal with it. Instead of you usually had another deputy would come in and assist you on certain things, or they would come in and handle a certain issue that was going on, which allowed you to continue to run your area and do your rounds and check on people and things like that. Well, that has disappeared. Anything that changes inside the pod, it's the pod deputy who's by themselves dealing with it. That means feeds, medical passes, commissary, anything, library, any of those things that are going on, one deputy's dealing with it, where you usually had another deputy come in and handle that part of it. So the workload is even higher than it was before. And those things, that's what really adds to that burnout. And then when you're doing it for 14 to 16 hour days, it's just not sustainable. You can't expect somebody to work that hard for that many years and not be burned out. It's just impossible. And that means their productivity goes way down. They're just not as productive as if they were well rested and not overworked.
Well, I mean, one of the things we're seeing, at the Colorado FOP related to deputies who work in the Denver Sheriff's Department, one of the things we do is we have a mental health wellness program where members of our organization are able to access mental health services through the organization at no cost. And one of the things we're seeing is that there's a way higher amount of Denver deputies accessing those services than officers in other agencies. It's very disproportionate, and it's something that we've noticed that's been going on for several years. We've had conversations with officers about what that is. A lot of it they're saying is the burnout. A lot of it is, causing stresses on their families and themselves, and it's one of the reasons why we run that program, not just for Denver, but for all officers in Colorado. It just seems like Denver deputies are using it at a much higher rate.
Our members, in doing that over time, and especially the younger ones that may be newly married or have a new child at home, that burnout gets multiplied by going, I can't make it home tonight because I have to do overtime. I'm sorry, you're going to have to be at home with the child all night. And that added stress starts building up that anxiety of, I don't want to go to work because I'm going to get ordered to stay and I need to take care of my family. So yes, the mental health side to the stress and the anxiety from the way that the sheriff's department is operating at 60% is huge. The amount of people that contact the board and say, hey, where can I go? I need to talk to somebody is definitely gone up over the years.
Wow. Well, hopefully, something can get done with this. I don't know. I think we probably, have covered, what we wanted to talk about, which was, major problems and challenges, factors that are going on in the agency, and, kind of getting some understanding about what's causing those things and what's happening. Somebody want to give some remarks in closing? I let everybody have a turn.
Yeah, for our lodge, the biggest thing for us is that if we're going to start change, it has to start with the contract. That's the main starter of things, and things can follow from there. But if without a plan on how we're going to address this staffing issue, we have to start with the contract. That's where it has to start. Mm-hmm. They have to put a commitment into the sheriff's department and pay the people competitively, and that's where we are right now.
To add to that, yes, one of our biggest visions is that we are treated fairly in the Department of Safety with the City and County of Denver. It is very lopsided in terms of treatment, in conversations with the city, in pay, in a lot of aspects. And if we could just have a fair stake at the table, it would improve a little bit. And the way we do that is, through the contract and other areas. There's no end in sight. There's no plan. But let us have a seat at the table and let's come up with something. And the city is not willing to work with us on that.
Sean?
So, I'm just, kind of thinking about what Jared's talking about and the questions you asked about the mental aspect of this. And you just got to put yourself into the position of a brand new deputy who comes in and is told, you're not only going to have to work the hours that you're required to work, and you want to have a life as you're in your 20s and do things, but you're going to have to work 24 hours mandatory overtime. And we all know, based on these numbers, people are working significantly more hours than that a month, which means you have an idea that this is where I'm at for the next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And then you have people like Jared and Mike before he retired that at the end of their career, they're just like, I've got to get to the end. And it just harkened to me to think it's the Eagles song, the Hotel California. You can check out anytime you want, but you can never leave. And that's what it is to be at the sheriff's department right now. And so people are like, I'm not doing that for the rest of my life or even for the next 3 years. There's more value in something, even if I make less money or don't even have a job, it's better than doing this. And we need to see, and we want a commitment from the city that shows the people that are working there that this is not the Hotel California, that you can check out anytime you want. And this doesn't have to be the sole purpose in your life. And we're going to pay you accordingly, and we're going to get some reinforcement. adjustments. And that's where our hope is. That's been our goal. We're not asking to be millionaires. We're just asking to be treated fairly and to be able to send a message directly to our folks that are doing these hours, that are working so hard, that we have a commitment to you.
I'm just going to say, given my history working in the agency and the things that I did there and observed, and as a person who was a leader in the agency and in the FOP, it's a tough job. It's always been a tough job. The sheriff's department in Denver, 80% of the people who work there are going to be working in a jail facility, and 20% are going to be doing the other functions required by sheriff's departments in the state. That's just the nature of the way the city and county of Denver is laid out, and so that's what's going to happen. And jail work is tough work. Law enforcement work in general is tough, but working in facilities, especially ones that are crowded and have high jail populations, are very challenging. When I worked there, the people that I worked there with, the men and women that I worked there with, I was very proud of them. I was very proud to be part of that. I'm still proud that, I had a career in the Denver Sheriff's Department. And I used to tell people when I worked there, I'd say, Denver Sheriff's Department deputies, they're the quiet heroes of the Department of Safety. You see the police department and you see the fire department, and you see the work that they're doing, and they the nature of their job means they're in the public view more, and so they have a higher profile. But the Denver Sheriff's Department, those people are doing their job, and that they're doing their job because you don't see them and you don't hear about them. And when you're not hearing about them, that means that they're keeping a lid on it, that they're keeping things safe, they're keeping things secure, and they're doing that in a very tough situation. And so, thank you guys for being the quiet heroes. Continue to do that. Any Denver deputies who see this, continue to move forward and persevere and do a good job, and just know that you should be proud of the work that you do, because it's tough work. That's all for today, I think, for the Colorado Protectors podcast. I want to thank the guests for joining today and providing some good insight on what's going on in the Denver Sheriff's Department. And we'll see you next time on the Colorado Protectors podcast.